Kicking off the list at number 10. The lights. Imagine you're driving home one night after a long shift at work. Maybe you worked late, it's midnight, you're driving, and now all of a sudden in front of you, in front of your very eyes, you see a V formation in the sky made up of yellow and orange lights. Do you pull over? Do you assume you're beyond exhausted and maybe all this is happening in your mind? Well, back in 2001, on July 14th, drivers along the New Jersey Turnpike saw exactly that. It was a touch after midnight and cars legit pulled over to the side, got out just to get a better look at what was happening in the sky. Everybody looked at this thing for like 15 minutes. It was hovering over top of Arthur Kill Waterway, right between Staten Island and New Jersey, and one eyewitness named Joe Malvasio, he recalls the sighting as one of the most amazing things he had ever seen. And then they just vanished, just like that. They faded out one by one, which is kind of Star Wars-like. Maybe this kind of went to light speed. Daniel Tarrant, lieutenant of the Carteret Police Department, he recalls seeing this with his own eyes as well. 16 golden colored lights in a V formation. Sounds terrifying. Aliens are fun and all, but keep your eyes on the road, you know? 10 and 2. Let's move on. Number 9. Stephenville sightings. Fast forwarding a few-ish years to 2008. Aliens are back. This time not in a flying goose V formation, no. This time they're in a small Texas town just full of dairy farms. Not a lot going on in that one. This time citizens reported lights in the sky, but they were white as opposed to golden. And they were also in a horizontal arc, and then they moved into vertical lines. They were moving. That's the real Donnie difference this time around. They were going around 3,000 miles per hour. These things were trucking. They must have just sucked up a bunch of cows and they're like, ow! And they just zoomed out of there. I don't know why aliens like cows so much. Even in Zelda Majora's Mask, one mission, it's like, protect these cows from aliens. I'm like, why? Is this a real thing? Is this a real concern? Why do they like cows so much? Number 8, go fast. Okay, a bit more modern now. This one was trending recently, but it was actually recorded back in 2015. It was just on the low for a while. It was part of that big alien leak that we got. Remember that? That was fun. What you're seeing here is the view from a FA-18 Super Hornet following a UAP. Yeah, we don't call them UFOs anymore. That's so 2000s. Now we call them UAPs. Unidentified aerial phenomena. Not non. I would say non. Phenomena. US Navy personnel caught this UAP flying along the East Coast, and there was no exhaust, no wings, just a fast egg. So it seems, hence the name Go Fast. A 45-foot long egg traveling 20,000 feet above the Atlantic. That's horrifying. I don't know, I think that's pretty horrifying. And then it just flew away and we haven't seen it since. Can't wait for that egg to hatch. Looking forward to another visit, I guess. I'm so scared. Moving on. Number 7, O'Hare Airport. The day was November 7th. The year was 2006 and Flight 446 was gearing up with passengers and luggage alike, ready to fly to North Carolina from Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. But the flight was a tad delayed due to the, hovering metallic craft just lurking around the airport. 12 United employees and others who were just there to fly out all reported seeing this thing. Clear as day. It was 4:15 p.m. so it wasn't at midnight. Nobody was driving delirious, humming old songs on their way home. No, it was a business day otherwise. Witnesses watched this hover for around 5 minutes before it, you guessed it, zipped off into another galaxy. It even pushed through clouds, so it wasn't a balloon or like a weather balloon or some sort. This report was one of the most read stories on the Chicago Tribune's website. I mean, of course, people are talking about aliens. No one's gonna not tune in. It was deemed a weather phenomenon in the end, because, well, of course it was. The UFO was not seen on the radar, any radar for that matter. So now we're just going off what people said. This whole list is what people said, or else we would know about it, This next one though, number 6, the USS Nimitz. Oh, here we go. Okay, we're floating out to the sea for this one, the spooky ocean. The ocean kid's back, yet again, here we go. November 2004, the USS Princeton, it's part of the USS Nimitz strike group. They noted this craft, a UAP rather, thanks. When aliens like, UAP. At first they saw this craft not in the sky, but under the sea, which is interesting because the Go Fast video also seems like it's coming from the ocean. The ocean is so unexplored, as we know from this channel alone. There could be a plethora of aliens just waiting down there below. A few moments later, the white tic-tac shaped alien craft came out of the water, and again, a white tic-tac shaped UAP. It's always an egg shape. What's going on here? These little freaks have style. 2 FA-18 fighter jets were flying above, as earlier reports put the egg 80,000 feet above the water, so they flew in to check it out and saw it moving around below the surface. Again, no exhaust, infrared didn't pick up anything, it just lifted up and shot away 3 times the speed of sound. Pretty scary. Number 5, Roswell. I had to include Roswell in this list, of course. The one that kicked it all off. Kind of. This one was in the newspapers. Right in the front page, it says, RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. The year was 1947. This is on a newspaper. Are you kidding me? I'd be like, What? But this time around, we have hundreds of witnesses, and they claim to have a connection to this incident. Yes, I think that alien was also a Libra. I feel connected to it. This famous event, I somehow feel connected to it. Awesome. Yeah, there were numerous books published around the 80s about it, and apparently what really happened that day in Roswell, New Mexico, was a flying saucer crash landed, and there were one or more aliens inside. Also, they were pronounced dead at the scene, hence the crash. Pretty wild step up from go fast, but okay, I'll take it. In 1997, the Air Force decided to put their 2 cents in on the whole 50th anniversary, and they released a report called Case Closed, Final Report on the Roswell Crash. And then you look into it, and the New York Times got involved saying no to pretty much everything. Nope, there were no ships, no bodies, no crash, no artifacts, just nope. But I mean, that's what I would say if I was trying to cover up some shit. I'd be like, nope. Was there a crash? No. Are aliens real? No. Number 4, Mount Rainier. Not to be confused with Mount Chiliad's aliens. Those are also pretty scary. Mount Rainier, located in Washington, was bumping and buzzing back in 1947. Pilot Kenneth Arnold was the first modern report on a flying saucer, believe it or not. This one's pretty historical. Or flying egg, apparently. We don't know. Kenneth saw 9 circular-shaped objects flying in formation, the classic formation, and they were flying at twice the speed of sound. So the Idaho pilot told the Air Force, and they laughed it off. He took this claim to his grave. Kenneth stood by what he saw until his death in 1984. He saw UAPs, he saw multiple of them, and he reached out to Seattle Times in 1977 saying, "I made my report because I thought it was my duty. It was the only proper and American thing to do. I saw what I saw." Anytime somebody says, "I saw what I saw," my heart goes, whoa. It's like, okay, I kind of believe him. Do we believe him? Comment down below. Number 3. Leveland flaming thing. Nice, we love that. Imagine opening the newspaper in 1957 and on the front cover you read, "Leveland flaming thing brings world knocking at city's door." What does it even mean? Back in 1957 in Leveland, Texas, multiple eyewitness reports began to flood in about a, you guessed it, egg-shaped object or this circular flash of light, one of the two, jetting across Leveland skies. I just like saying Leveland if I'm being honest. Leveland. One witness recalls the object making a loud humming noise as it flew by, which is different. It's different than the other accounts that we've heard so far. The egg shape keeps coming back, but this is an encounter where it's been reported as loud, with a great rush of wind, not silent and egg-like. On top of that claim, the witness's car radio began to go haywire at the same time. The radio thing, I don't know, that's not too crazy. Growing up, my computer speakers would always tell me if a call was coming in. The Air Force commented on it, saying this was just a phenomenon caused by electrical storms. It was a ball of lightning, they say, back in 1957. Okay, it was a phenomenon or phenomena, one of the two. I won't tell you. Next part, I'll tell you. Number 2, Valençol. Will you be my Valençol? Please don't, actually, this one's really scary. Valençol, France, aka France's Roswell. That's a pretty loaded nickname right there. Back in July 1965, Maurice Massé swears to a close encounter with an alien. Like an actual, like person to person. He says that he saw not 1, but 2 aliens landing a spherical UAP in an open field. And if you're wondering how he knew there were 2 in the raft, it's because they got out of the ship right after landing. Uh-oh, I'd be so scared at that point. Aliens in a field of flowers. How beautiful must this first contact be? The French farmer recalls one of these things aiming some sort of like laser beam at him, and then moments later the guy was paralyzed. So, I don't know, maybe aliens are kind of mean. After that moment, the aliens flew off, but they checked out the area a bit first, you know? They got in, picked a flower, paralyzed the dude, and then just zipped off. Do we buy this? I mean, this was posted in the newspaper. It was explained in the lovely Le Dauphine paper, so who knows? And finally, number 1, the Great Pyramid of Cholula. There are many parallels between Egyptian and Maya civilizations, and I had to end this list by connecting a few. The 2 cultures are so far apart historically and, well, geographically, they never made contact, they never traded goods, but both these famous pyramids in both these places are made with steps, and both have stone serpents just engraved on them. The vault arches are strikingly similar, and hieroglyphs within share a lot of the same symbolism. These hieroglyphs included advanced mathematics that they say was bestowed upon them, also from these sky gods. Were these just landing sites for our alien ancestors? Possibly. Maybe all these cultures and civilizations throughout these years are just reporting the same thing because aliens are real. I don't know, I hope not. Anyways, that's the end of this list. So many aliens.
Starting off this countdown, we have the alien abduction. Back in 1956, an American Air Force Sergeant, Jonathan P. Lovett, and Major William Cunningham went out searching for debris from a recent missile launch in New Mexico. That's when Cunningham heard Lovett let out a huge scream. When he rushed over to help him, he claims he saw Lovett being pulled up by a UFO hovering above him. Lovett was then pulled inside the craft and it took off. Cunningham radioed for help, and when they arrived, they found him in complete shock and he was taken to the hospital. They then started to investigate the incident. According to the military, there was an unidentified object in that area detected on their radar, so Cunningham was telling the truth. Here's where it gets even more messed up though. 3 days later, Lovett's body was found 10 miles away. It was severely mutilated and drained completely of blood. So could it be that he literally was taken away by aliens and then killed by them? What makes this even more suspicious is that the government report on this just vanished into thin air. In our 9th spot, we have the Gorman Dogfight UFO. This is said to be one of the most well-known UFO encounters from the 20th century. It's also a fairly credible one. So on October 1st, 1948, US Air Force pilot George Gorman was out flying when he spotted a UFO below him. He described it as a flying disc with round and well-defined edges that was brightly lit and circling slowly over the city. What was weird was that the object was not showing up on radar. So Gorman decided to follow it, but as he got closer to the object, it got brighter and then it shot away from him. He said it went around 250 miles per hour, then increased to 600 miles an hour. Due to its speed, Gorman lost sight of it. Now the government was all like, it's just a weather balloon. Yeah right, I think an experienced aviator would know the difference between a weather balloon and a flying saucer. Moving on to number 7, we have the Top Cliff UFO. On September 19th in 1952, half a dozen Royal Air Force officers were taking part of NATO exercises when they encountered a UFO. So the men were headed back in their fighter jet when crew members on the ground saw a weird, silvery, circular object traveling several thousands of feet above the jet. One of the witnesses said, and I quote, "The acceleration was in excess of that of a shooting star. I have never seen such a phenomenon before. The movements of the object were not identifiable with anything I have seen in the air." The craft then started to descend close to the fighter jet. They said it was, and I quote, "swinging in a pendular motion, similar to a falling sycamore leaf." At first, they thought it was a parachute or something that had fallen off of the jet. That was until it stopped midair, began to spin, and then just zoomed away. This sighting was then leaked to the press and was the front cover of the newspapers for quite some time. In fact, this sighting was so insane that Prime Minister Winston Churchill wanted to know more about it and get an investigation going. In our 6th spot, we have the destroyed evidence. On the morning of July 24th, 1948, 2 pilots were flying from Houston to Atlanta with their 20 passengers. That's when all of a sudden they saw a UFO flying clear as day by them. This was witnessed by the 2 pilots and one of the passengers. The others were asleep when this happened. One of the pilots said, and I quote, "It was clear there were no wings present, that it was powered by some jet or other type of power, shooting flame from the rear some 50 feet. There were 2 rows of windows which indicated an upper and lower deck, and from inside these windows a very bright light was glowing. Underneath the ship there was a blue glow of light." Now they all watched this for about 10 seconds until it disappeared. Obviously, they reported their findings, and this triggered a top secret investigation by the US government. In the end, their findings were destroyed, which means this could be a real UFO sighting, because if it wasn't, they wouldn't have destroyed the evidence. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the White House UFO. Back in the 1940s and 50s, there were a number of UFO sightings in the skies over Washington, D.C. It all started back in 1947 when a search and rescue pilot reported 9 saucer-like discs flying together at over 1,000 miles per hour. Within weeks, the same flying saucer sighting was reported in 40 other states. The strangest incident happened to an air traffic controller in 1952. On July 19th, Edward Nugent, working as an air traffic controller at Washington National Airport, spotted 7 slow-moving objects on his radar. They were located far from any of their flight paths. Now he made a joke being like, "Oh look, they're flying saucers," until he realized that that's probably what they actually were. At that same time, 2 more air traffic controllers saw a strange hovering bright light in the distance. Now they did send out jets to the area, but as soon as they got to the area where the objects were on the radar, they disappeared. Over the next couple of weeks, more and more UFOs were spotted. It got to the point where people were demanding answers. In our 3rd spot, we have the 6 soldiers. This next UFO encounter took place in North Korea in 1951 during the Korean War. As the men were preparing to bombard a nearby village, they were all of a sudden greeted by a strange craft. The craft emitted some form of ray that made their air burst start to explode. According to one of the men, and I quote, "Objects would get right into the center of an airburst of artillery and yet remain unharmed." They also said that they were, and I quote, "swept by some form of a ray that was emitted in pulses, in waves that you could visually see only when it was aiming directly at you." That is to say, like a searchlight sweeps around and the segments of light, you would see it coming at you. After this weird attack, the men were left sick and had to be taken to the hospital. Some say that they were attacked by a UFO. Others say they were attacked by a high-tech Soviet death ray. To this day, we still don't know. Moving on to number 2, we have the Mantell UFO Incident. Named after Captain Thomas F. Mantell, a Kentucky Air National Guard pilot who sadly lost his life chasing a UFO. So on January 7th, 1948, Godman Army Airfield at Fort Knox received a report of a weird aerial object near Madisonville, Kentucky. They claim it was a floating circular object around 250 to 300 feet in diameter. So the US Air Force sent Thomas to investigate. Sadly, while doing so, he crashed his plane and lost his life. Now, Thomas was a very experienced pilot. He had spent around 2,167 hours in the air, so it's not like him to just crash like that. Other people that saw the UFO claimed it was very white with red borders at the bottom. Some even said, and I quote, "Just before leaving it came to very near the ground, staying down for about 10 seconds, then climbed at a very fast rate back to its original altitude, 10,000 feet, leveling off and disappearing into the overcast, heading 120 degrees. Its speed was greater than 100 miles per hour in level flight."
Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have the pink see-through Fantasia. While the name of these guys would kind of make someone think that they're like cool and sexy, in reality these guys are definitely not that. The pink see-through Fantasia is a sea cucumber normally found about 1.5 miles deep in the waters of the Celebes Sea, which is located in the western Pacific. These guys were actually discovered only quite recently in 2007, but there's something about them that might either prove that they've been here for much longer, or maybe they had quite the chance to develop their survival skills somewhere else. These guys are able, when frightened, to emit a light through bioluminescence in order to scare off potential predators. This animal of course gets its name through its see-through appearance and pink color, and this is what makes their intestines completely visible to the outside world. In our number 9 spot today, we have the vampire squid. The scientific name of these creatures directly translates into vampire squid from hell, and they get their name from their fantastic red color, their glowing eyes, and their webbing in between the arms, which appears as a sort of cloak. Well, that's where the vampire part comes from. The squid part is a little trickier. While the vampire squid shares quality with both squid and octopuses, they don't actually belong to either of these families, and they are instead in a category of their own entirely. In the past, there were more members in this same family, but the vampire squid is now the last remaining member, which is why they are often referred to as a living fossil. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Leafy Seadragon. These are a creature that are definitely one of the coolest looking on this list. A lot of weird sea creatures tend to look absolutely horrifying, but these ones are most definitely a little easier on the eyes. These fish belong to the family that includes pipefish and seahorses, but they are the only species in their genus. The Leafy Seadragon is most commonly found along the southern and western coasts of Australia, and they are very obviously named from their appearance. It would seem as though these guys would use these leafy protrusions to help propel them through the water, but that is not the case, and instead they are merely used as camouflage. These sea dragons are usually quite solitary, but they also have an incredible sense of direction. It was once thought that they didn't travel very far, but it was later discovered that they actually travel several hundred miles, but use this keen sense of direction to return to the same spots, which is actually very cool. In our number 7 spot today, we have the fossil monster. Okay, so as the name would suggest, this isn't a still living creature, and instead is one that has been found in a fossil. These fossils pertaining to one particular creature have only been found in one spot, and they come from a time about 300 million years ago when what is now Illinois was covered in water. Found in the Mason Creek fossil beds, they have found the fossils of an animal called Tullymonstrum gregarium, or simply the Tully monster. What is so unique about these fossils from this creature, other than the fact that it lived 300 million years ago, which is wild, is that attempts at classifying this creature have been highly controversial. Interpretations of this fossil have been likened to mollusks, arthropods, conodonts, worms, and vertebrates. It is super weird that this creature, with fossils located in only one place from 300 million years ago, is super hard to classify because it has a bunch of different attributes that could be placed in a number of different animal classes. I'm not saying it's an alien, I'm just saying it's a little mysterious. In our number 6 spot today, we have the mimic octopus. Octopuses in general are all insane. Like, I fully believe that basically all of them could be from another planet because I just don't understand how they look like that, how they're all so smart, and how they can individually use their little suckers. I don't know. They're just fascinating creatures, and the mimic octopus is no exception. These guys are normally found in the Indo-Pacific, and they get their name from their unbelievable ability to use chromatophores to blend in with their surroundings or perhaps to impersonate another marine animal. Most of the time they use this ability to defend themselves from predators, but they can also be seen using it to help them catch their prey. For example, they might appear as a crab's potential mate before they chomp down on their certainly confused and surprised tasty snack. In our number 5 spot today, we have the peacock mantis shrimp. I mean, need I say more? These guys can be found in the Indian and tropical western Pacific Oceans, and man are they a wondrous sight. They get their peacock name from their fantastic colors, but despite how awesome these candy-colored shrimp are to look at, this actually isn't what they are known best for. These guys are actually best known for their ability to quickly punch with their front 2 appendages, and despite their tiny size, don't underestimate their power. Apparently, this punch is one of the fastest movements in the entire animal kingdom. In fact, it's so fast that it causes enough power to be able to break the glass wall of an aquarium. I mean, they definitely know how to pack a punch. Luckily, they usually save this sort of thing to break open mollusks and help them get through a crab's armor. In our number 4 spot today, we have the colossal squid. The colossal squid is a creature that is not to be confused with the giant squid, which is similar but slightly smaller. These guys live in the darkest, coldest depths surrounding the waters of Antarctica. This creature lives up to its name as it reaches an average of 46 feet in size, and it weighs around 500 kilograms, with the females being the largest of the species. They also have large tentacles equipped with suckers that have little razor hooks on them to better latch onto its prey, so let's hope it's not you. Its diet mainly consists of large fish, such as the 7-foot Patagonian toothfish. It also includes small ones, and sometimes they even consume their own kind. But they've also been known to try and consume larger prey, like sperm whales, who often have been seen with scars attributing to the battles they must have faced. They're colossal, they're scary, and they're ambitious. What more could you want from a sea monster? Only 2 specimens have ever been collected, with the second being found recently in 2014. If you ever wondered where the tails of the Kraken came from, you now know. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Predatory Tunicate. Okay, say what you want about any other fish on this list today, but these guys definitely look the most like aliens, and honestly, they are the epitome of deep sea weirdness. The Predatory Tunicate is like the Venus flytrap of the deep sea. They start out life kind of like tadpoles, and then they swim until they find their perfect spot, either along a canyon wall or right on the sea floor. Once they found their spot, they plant themselves in place using a natural adhesive that they produce. Once planted, they will undergo a huge change, and this is where they will stay for the rest of their lives. They are super picky about where exactly they make their homes because it will be where they stay, and because they need to make sure that both the chemicals in the water in that area as well as the temperature of the water is just right. Unfortunately, if these guys get moved from the location they choose to make their home, they will die, so it's imperative that they're just left alone. They basically wait for food to drift on by, and like a Venus flytrap, when they get their meal, their mouths will snap shut until they're done digesting. The Predatory Tunicate is a point of study in the medical world because they actually have been known to help with some more serious medical conditions, which is always an incredible thing. In our number 2 spot today, we have the sea pen. Okay, this thing under the sea looks a lot like a pen, right? Well, the orange sea pen is not a pen, and it's not even a sort of plant. It's actually a colony of animals that can withdraw into the soft sediment wherever it is found. So I just heard of these guys today, but it turns out they are a lot more common, and there are actually about 300 species of sea pens. To make them even more out of this world, it is said that with a little stimulation, they glow with a green sort of light. So I don't know about you, but that's the most alien thing I've ever heard. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Yeti Crab. Okay, I'll be honest, these guys are on this list today because they look so incredibly strange, but they are also remarkably unique. These furry clawed crabs, Yes, you heard me. They were first discovered 5,000 feet deep in the ocean near a hydrothermal vent. They were found just south of Easter Island, and when found, it was realized that they were not only in a new genus of their own, but a new family as well. Because of the deep, dark, and extreme environment that these guys live in, not much about them is known at this point in time. It is believed that they likely don't have sight, and it's also thought that they might have a sort of bacteria that resides in its furry claws, which allows it to detoxify the food that is coming from the vent. Listen, the ocean is scary, but it's also unbelievable and truly incredible.